Good afternoon, everyone. Um, it is now 1:02, and we're going to call the meeting to order. Okay, we'll first start with roll call.
Michael Wood,
Here.
Jacinta Parker,
Here.
James Smith,
Here.
Cesar Rubio, Vernon Snodderly, Nick Jensen.
Here.
Stephen Evans,
Here.
John Lewis,
Here.
Angelica Gamboa,
Here.
Hannah Brady,
Here.
Mohammed Rashid.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay. Next, item number 3, remote participation due to emergency circumstances. We have a motion to approve any member requests to participate remotely due to emergency circumstances pursuant to Government Code 54953. Do you have any? Okay. Next on our agenda, we have public comments. Okay, moving along. Next, we will review the consent calendar with the review of the September 11th meeting. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 11th meeting?
Second.
Okay. The minutes for September 11th have been approved, motioned and approved. Next item is, oh, sorry, excuse me. We'll vote. Okay. Regarding the motion to approve the minutes for September 11th, they've been moved and second. Can we get a vote for approval? All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes for September 11th have been approved. Next item is discussion and action with a motion to recommend that the Board of Directors approve by resolution the 2025 Service Monitoring Report.
Madam Chair, I'll take that item. Angela Swanson, Senior Transit Analyst. This, if we could load up the presentation.
Yeah.
Say yes, civil service monitoring. I know you all have been waiting with bated breath to go through approving this portion of Title VI. Here we go. All right, so this is our service monitoring report. It's part of our Title VI compliance. Next slide, please. So Title VI is part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, where we ensure that there is no discrimination on the basis of race, nation of origin, or language spoken. And we are doing this service monitoring report because we are a transit agency now that operates more than 50 vehicles at peak service. That means how many vehicles are on the street at one time? We're actually in up to upwards of 60. And we happen to be in an urban population that's greater than 200,000. The standards of service monitoring are expected of all transit agencies, but it's only when we're this size that we have to formally do this report at least triennially on a basis. And what we look at is comparing the way service is provided, having broken down our transit routes into minority versus non-minority routes. All right, next. So minority route classifications in our there's a specific formula that we follow and how we set it up that really takes a look where I use wonderful geographic software that looks at the census block populations along where our transit lines are. And you look at the entire service area, which set our minority population at 62% roughly around the area where all of our transit routes are. So to be a minority route on a third of the route length for any individual route has to meet or exceed 62% minority population. So that's how we determine and break down our routes. We have 14 routes that are designated minority. We excluded our commuter routes because they really don't serve an area. We're taking people from our population center to BART and to the ACE train. And also excluded was Route 10, which is our express route that goes between the transit center in Modesto, basically to the transit center in Turlock with a stop at Stan State. So that one was excluded from consideration as well. So the other thing that goes in with looking at the service monitoring is there a disparity? Because there'll be differences between minority route qualities that we're measuring and non-minority routes, but it has to hit a level of disparity between them that signals that there is something that needs to be looked at and adjusted. And that policy is set by the individual transit agency, and we have set ours at plus or minus 15%. And the disparity can be 15% more, in a way, more benefit or lack of benefit in the way that that's measured. So our sampling period that we used was in spring of 2025, and we're ready to move on and start diving into some of the data that came up. So this map shows you next the system and the areas. So our minority routes, and this, I apologize, I know it's not the best, but it shows you, it really catches, it's a lot of our more rural routes, as well as routes in West Modesto and some central Modesto. But it's routes 21, 26, 29, the 29T, the 33, the 38, that's the airport district, 40, 42, 45, the 47, which is part of series, the 48, the 50, and the 61, which goes out to Houston. Our non-minority routes, next slide. And just looking at it, you can see that's much more central Modesto and then going up north into the 60 that going out to Oakdale and Riverbank. So that we're catching more central Modesto is a little bit more mixed in our communities. And that's the routes 22 and 23, which go up and down McHenry, 24, 25, 30, 31, 33, 37, and the 6. So that just breaks that down for you. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, minority we're defining as race,
Non-white.
just non-white. That's the
Non-white.
census category.
So yeah, so that's in the most simplistic form that we take a look at it because we try to catch the broadest net is the perspective that we take through Title VI, trying to catch it.
Non-white. Okay, thank
Or yeah, a white, identifying as white is really more appropriate. All right, so the next slide. So there are 6 areas that we're required to look at for our service monitoring. The vehicles that are on the routes are on our routes. How crowded are the buses to make sure that they're not more crowded on minority roads? Headways, which is how far bus routes are spaced, the buses are spaced apart in how often they come. So do you have to wait 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours? How long do you have to wait? On-time performance, which is pretty self-explanatory. Service availability, and that's a measure of how close you are if you live on a minority or non-minority route to a bus stop. And then vehicle assignments, that's looking to make sure that we're not, frankly, placing old and decrepit buses in minority communities versus non-minority communities. And the last is how well dispersed our transit amenities are, which are basically our bus stops and the amenities that go with our bus stops throughout the system. All right, next. So I'm going to go through and just hit a quick slide on each of the measures that we did in the service report around it. So the first is on our vehicle passenger load. And just first, I wanted to give you that we do have the standard that was established. And our standard will be updated, I believe, in the next year because we are looking at low floor and standard buses and 35 and 40-foot buses. And our fleet has gotten a lot more standardized since we did this. But essentially, what it sets, and when you look at this table, is that peak capacity, which would be allowing us during rush hour periods that we could have more people on the bus because, you know, you have more folks 7 to 9 a.m. typically than you would at off-peak, which would tend to be evenings and weekends. The big numbers we are basically looking at is that you could load no more than, like with the low floor 40-footers is what we typically were referring to. 54 people on the bus at peak, and 36 would be our off-peak capacity. So it's 1.5 times normal capacity. Next slide. So having given you the standard, this is how it compares. Blue is always used to refer to the minority routes in these slides as they come through, and orange for the non-minority routes. And as you look at it during peak operating hours, that even at their most full, the buses are running at just under 12 passengers. Is the average boarding per hour that we have going on. The Saturdays, minority routes were 8 and then 8.4 as we're looking at Sundays. So while in our minority routes, the buses were a little bit fuller, they were still so well below being at capacity that it was deemed to be within bounds and not requiring a finding of there being disparity and being something that needs to be remedied in that case. And so let me know if there are any questions. It's not rocket science, I know. Second, we move on. Oh, yes, Nick.
Just one quick question. I was
Yes.
curious. It's loud today. I was curious if there were any particular like times that stood out as having a significantly higher amount of passenger.
No, what actually skewed the loading had to do more with a couple of the routes that the frequency on the non-minority routes, so that broke it down a little bit more so you could distribute it people, like along McHenry Boulevard, even though those buses get very full, you've got 5 buses an hour going along there. Similarly, we do that on Paradise, which is every 15 minutes. But when the routes are a little bit come more infrequently because a lot of our more rural routes were there, that affected it a little bit. Again, because we're not looking at a whole lot of differential. Our off-peak hours are actually evening hours because we don't truly get enough of a peak during the day with a bubble, even though it's busy and traffic is bad and buses are busier 4 to 6 p.m. It's not a real distinguishable peak period that you would see in a normal commuter city, like that you would see in an urban area like LA or San Francisco. Yes. So we'll go on to our next slide where we're going to be looking at our second metric, which is on-time performance. So here, minority routes had a higher on-time performance compared to non-minority routes. So that's where the disparity is in the favor of the minority routes because they performed a little bit better. But again, the differentials are very limited between them. So you're looking at weekday of 49% versus 45% on time, minority versus non-minority, 53 versus 48, 53 versus 47. The biggest gap was on Saturdays and Sundays, which is actually a really great metric when you're thinking about because service hours are more limited, and on those days we have a shorter service day, and that it performed better in those areas. Overall, the statistic is that they performed 10 to 13% better. But again, we're really looking at very small fractional numbers and how we're looking at the differences. Next slide, please. We're going to go on to our headways, which again are the times between service. Our standards are 30 minutes for our city routes, which are mostly Modesto series area, those areas. Hourly for our more rural routes with 15-minute on the 21 that goes along Paradise, which is our most frequent service. We also have one route along McHenry, the 22, I believe it is, that's every 20 minutes. So that we have that frequency going on. And what we found is that non-minority routes had better headways than the minority routes did during peak hours, which is basically weekdays until 6 p.m. and on Saturdays. Sundays, there was parity because the service doesn't change at all in how often the headways occur. So what we're really end up measuring here is all service in the evening starts going from 30 minutes to 60 minutes because we just don't have that much demand for bus routes in the evenings. So during the weekdays, because there's so much more service and the service runs later, on our 30-minute, routes, which tend to be non-minority routes, they performed slightly better than you would see Saturdays. You had the same difference, but the schedules were closer together on both minority and minority routes on how frequently they come. Sundays, everything runs hourly everywhere. Like there's no changes in the way the service changes. So we see no change from peak and non-peak. So we found, and again, in this case, the biggest difference we found, Nick, to your point, was is there a point in time? There were two numbers that skewed us a little bit. There's, for instance, one route that is a minority route that operates, ends at 5 p.m., and then there's an 8 p.m. run. So technically, that's measured as a 180-minute headway, right? Because we do that last run. So that skews the timing for the day. Similarly, we have a couple of routes that do an extra early morning run, and there's a gap. So it's outliers. So if you took out an outlier measurement like that one, the performance is even more equal.
Gotcha. And just a quick follow-up. I'm just curious, which two routes are those that you're describing?
The 45, where we take an extra run out of Turlock to go to Patterson and Newman, and we do that because students were complaining that we saw a drop-off in service, and there wasn't a lot of need for evening service like at 6 p.m. But you had, if you took a late class or you worked a job till 5:30 or in the evening, you wanted that later hour. And we found it, we call it a cleanup run, but that it's proven to be an effective run, and that's why we operate it. And then the early morning, I want to say it's the 42, I'm trying to remember which run it is, where we do an early morning run because by the time we get in, there was a whole population that wasn't getting to work on time or to college classes on time. So we do that run, and it's at an odd hour with when we start it. I can look it up for you if you like. But again, what we found was, very close to parity on everything going on. 4 is where we're looking at service availability. And that's where we're basically trying to look at, are we getting bus routes to where populations are that we need and want to be serving? And are they living relatively close to the bus lines? So overall, 65% of StanRTA's population resides within 3/4 of a mile of a bus stop. And minority communities enjoy slightly better access. They have 52% versus 47% live within that 3/4 mile of a bus stop. So again, that's using census block data, just pulling that down. And we found no significant disparities, and any marginal move when you're considering how much of the county we're covering as a regional service are well within that 15% threshold. So if you look under the total population, like we're right where we want to be, like non-minority population, total residing within the county was 47.9%, 47% live within 3/4 mile. Similarly with the minority and non-minority, it stayed very close to doing it, and that's very reflective of our population in the area too. So we'll go on to number 6, which is looking at our transit amenities. So this one I will tell you is the most difficult to measure because when we look at our we have several bus stops in our system. We truly have only 950 bus stops approximately. We end up measuring a total of 579 plus 782, which is around 1,300 bus stops because several stops serve multiple routes. And instead of assigning something that could be skewing you with a bias toward assigning a bus stop into a minority or a non-minority, we just kept the number of stops total that are reported for each route and location, even though it resulted in some duplication. So for you to know that. And one of the other things to know is that with our non-minority routes, and part of why that number is so large, 2 routes, which are our jumbo routes, account for 30% of the routes of the bus stops among the non-minority routes, and it skews it with the number, and that's Route 25 and Route 37, which basically loop around the east side of town from the transit center across up and then over to Vintage Fair and covering it. So they're very long. The average bus route has about 50 bus stops on it. These have over in 120, and I think one was 159. So they're really huge. So that really skews things. Again, if you take them out, they're really not comparable to the rest of the routes. 25, yeah. So if you've ridden 25 and if you, it's long, and 37 is similarly long, not as long, but very long. And they're in dense urban areas. So there's just more stops. So that really throws our numbers off a little bit. But again, looking at it, where we see some disparity is that there are more benches available, which is our first measure on the far left in blue. There's 143 benches for non-minority, 228 for the non-minority stops. Similarly, trash cans, there are fewer compared to non-minority routes. Similarly, bus shelters, solar lights were about dead even between the two. And as you all know from your past meetings, solar lights are the hardest amenity for us to maintain because they basically are all getting stolen out of everywhere. We can't keep them anymore. And in looking at that, the overall numbers and the finding for no disparity, and I didn't put the extra table in, it's in the report, is that when you look at the difference between the gross number of bus stops between the two, and that proportionately, they're very similar all the way across. They're with minor difference. And so that kind of, I know I've just kind of walked way through it very quickly, trying to move along. Any other follow-up questions? We'll go to the next slide on key takeaways.
I do have a question.
Perfect.
Or maybe we, yeah, I guess, yeah, I can talk about it now. So just on the last slide on transit
Yeah.
amenities.
Yes.
I was wondering, so those comparisons between minority routes and non-minority routes, when you're looking at the overall percentages, are they looking at the number of, for example, bus stop shelters along the entire route, or just along the portions of the route that are considered?
We look along, and so once something is designated a minority route, and then you look at all minority routes together and non-minority routes together is the standard way that FTA has us do this analysis.
Gotcha.
And so what we're looking at is really measuring for the number of bus stops that exist at minority and non-minority. So bus stops on minority routes, what percentage of them have this amenity?
Mhm.
And that we're looking at. Here, I'm just giving you the straight numbers because frankly, this is the least appetizing piece to look at is the pure numbers, right? But as you know, there's a difference with how many bus stops exist for non-minority versus minority. So you've got that imbalance between them for the number of stops. The other thing that we're not asked to measure that goes to what you're talking about, Nick, is that our bus stop philosophy is in town, they're a quarter mile apart. In out of town, they're in rural areas, no more than a half mile apart. With an exception, for instance, we don't stop between Turlock and Patterson all the way going up and down Main as we're going that because that's not our service area. So that it's an express where it goes, and then it gets into Patterson and the stops are a quarter mile apart there. So if we were measuring that would give you the kind of insight you're looking at. And that's not one of the measurements we're required to make to really get at, is there good balance in the number of stops that are available and the amenities that are made available at those stops?
Okay, yeah, yeah, and I guess, yeah, to that point, I think something that might be useful
Mm-hmm.
to understand the extent to which like these amenities are being distributed equitably would probably be a map, like, or maps demonstrating like where these are being placed, and like I would be curious to see if there might be patterns, like more geographically about where these things are popping up.
We actually can bring a map back to you at our next meeting and just do a little follow-up because we'll have more information from our consultants that'll be talking about our short-range transit plan. One of the pieces they actually been looking at, and it's a great graphic. I wanted to steal it for today, but I couldn't. But it shows the distribution of bus stops and bus stop shelters and our amenities throughout the system and how well, and I'm going to learn how to do that graph so I can bring it back myself and show you how it spreads out across the system to see how much closer we are to equity. I can tell you that every time Lucia Musso, who you've met before at our meetings, every time he does it, we go through a screening to make sure that amenities are being distributed as best we can. based on a series of factors, including is it going to a minority and non-minority route.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. That'd be great.
And again, a key thing to keep in mind is to be a minority route, they're classified as having a population along the route of at least a third of the route exceeding 62% minority, of a population being deemed as minority. So that's a very high concentration threshold that we're really looking at. So last slide, there we go with our key takeaways. Passenger loads are, so the overall findings, and I was looking for, are we seeing any indicators that there are real disparities and things that we need to be doing a cure for? Because that's part of what this is intended to look at. Passenger loads are well below capacity on our vehicles on all minority and non-minority routes. Minority routes exhibit better punctuality. Headways differences fall within the 15% threshold where there is some gap. Some of it is just a reflection of country and rural and urban routes. Service availability slightly favors minorities, which is what we should be doing because we do find in our community there is a correlation between ethnicity and income level and where we have our bus routes. So we're making sure we're having our bus routes around populations that may be more likely to be transit dependent. We have newer buses are actually more common on our minority routes, and our amenities distribution is pretty closely balanced. So the finding that we would be presenting that this has to be accepted by our board of directors would be, we're looking for you to motion an approval that there is no finding of disparate impacts in this service that we're providing on these 6 measures. I will hand it back to you, Madam Chair. So you're 6A, you're looking for a motion.
So can I get a motion to approve the resolution of the 2025 service monitoring report?
Oh, we have got
Are you
questions. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I rushed us.
If we can get any additional questions from the committee and also any comments from the public.
Oh, okay, sure. And I'm sorry I didn't have my mic on. Do we have any comments from the committee? Yes, Mohammed.
Does this also encompass paratransit or just fixed route?
This is only done and required for fixed route service to be looking at this because there really are no routes for paratransit.
True.
So that falls under the ADA.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do we have any other?
Just one more, sorry.
Sure.
I think the 15% threshold feels a bit high, and I guess I'm just wondering if it it doesn't sound like there are really like significant disparities from the analysis, but the 15% threshold seems high because just thinking about what 15% disparity would have looked like under the transit amenities, for example, I feel like
Right.
that would have had to be a really egregious difference to qualify for that threshold. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
All right.
And maybe in one size fits all, 15% isn't quite the right. Like maybe it would be good for certain of the standards, but not for others.
And that's a possibility we can take a look at. As a consequence of doing the short range transit plan, there are a lot that gives us an opportunity to take a look back at our standards as we're refreshing our whole look at the system. And we'll be in a new Title VI cycle, so that it would be very appropriate for us to agendize and bring that back.
Sure. Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the committee? We'll now open. Are there any public comments or questions? Okay. No comments from the public? Okay. Like to receive a motion to approve the resolution, the 2025 Service Monitoring Report. We have a motion. We have a second. It has been motioned in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll have, let's see, 6B, motion to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the resolution the 2022-25 Title VI Program Update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take this item too. Again, Angela Swanson. This is our, on a triennial basis, we are required to report overall. So service monitoring was the last portion of the individual aspect of the Title VI plan that we were approving. And again, Title VI, as you know, next slide, is the federal act that protects and ensures that no person in the United States shall on the ground of race, color, or national origin be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So in moving forward, let's go to the next slide. So in general, under Title VI, in filing this report, we do it every 3 years, looking back on our performance for the past 3 years. There are a whole series of general requirements that all transit agencies have to fulfill. And so this slide provides the list. So it looks first to see, do we advise the public appropriately with notices? Secondly, do we have complaints and complaint forms so that if someone feels that there's mistreatment or disparate treatment, that they can file a complaint? Do we have procedures? Do we have a plan that talks about how we will do a public participation plan, the PPP, which you all approved about a year ago? And that's how we identify the ways that we will reach out across into minority communities and broadly across all communities to encourage participation and use of our services. That we have a language assistance plan that takes a look at the ways that, again, we can do a better job of reaching out and embracing all community members. We have to describe how, with your group in particular, as well as our board of directors, what we are doing to do outreach so that we have a broadly diverse coalition of individuals that serve on our committees and councils. Also, there's a requirement that if we have a subrecipient that we're in charge of that gets money from us, that's federal money that's passed down, that we would be monitoring their compliance. We do not have that case, so that's not applicable. That we've done an equity analysis if a building was constructed. We're not there yet, but we will need to be reporting on this next time. And then that we have board approval of a Title VI plan, which will come in December when this is scheduled to go to the board. So those are the basic requirements I'm going to touch on real quickly, that we meet all those requirements. And then as a large provider, which is why we had to do the service monitoring plan, next slide, there we go. We have to show that we have service standards, that we have service policies. Nick, those are the policies that show up in the service monitoring doc. We have to show that an acknowledgement of the demographic profile and areas. So those are basically census maps. To do a recent survey, which for us was in 2025. We haven't had a chance to bring that back to you. It'll be at your next meeting. The fixed route survey that we do every year. Our service monitoring report that reports how well we're doing in enforcing those standards and policies. And then how we engage people for our policies, which is really where we provide a list of every public engagement we have done in the last 3 years, and the way and the form and the kind of ways that we've reached out to folks. And then the last is, as you remember, about a year ago, we were looking at doing some service changes with the Stockton commuter route and the Route 33 to add that service between the Modesto Junior College campuses. And we did a fair equity analysis to see if there were any negative consequences for us making those changes. And as a result of that, you all did not send approval for the change to the Stockton, where we were going to stop the Stockton commuter. And that was retained by, that was your request to the board, and the board upheld retention of that service. But you did recommend making the change to the Route 33 to add that extra mileage onto it, so that we provided the connectivity between East and West campuses for MJC. And that also was approved by the board. So those were the equity analyses that were provided. So having explained a lot of those, next slide. One thing, oh, and I have a typo here. We have 4 of us proofread it? Sorry, guys. Regulatory changes. Which is with the new administration, just to make clear and have it on the record, it's just a minor thing, is that Executive Order 13166, which was in the Clinton era, expanded it to be not just race and nation of origin, but also limited English proficiency, and that's been a standard that we have been using. That was undone in 2025 in the current administration with Executive Order 14224. So that is no longer something we particularly look at, even though our past 3 years we looked at that. Further, in 2012, this was expanded with the notion of environmental justice and social justice issues so that you're looking at disproportionate burdens that can be placed on low-income communities. That too has been something that has been in place that we have been working with. It was done under the Obama years. That was undone again by executive order on September 12th. And as a condition of that, we did not include that in the Title VI report. So I wanted you to know to understand why this is not being officially reported on, because it's no longer something they ask us to report on. But we do have the data, we do have all the information so that if it gets reversed again, we can be compliant. So next slide. So real quickly, just showing you the visual proof of the non-discrimination statement we have. It's on our buses, it's on our door, it's in all of our public meeting places that we do, so that that's made available. Along with that, we have as well on our website at customer service, the forms, the complaint procedures for folks to do any kind of a Title VI complaint. We also, in your document that you received, that I won't go through in detail here because I think I put you to sleep probably, is the investigations we have done on Title VI complaints to let you know, on every Title VI complaint that comes through, if someone says discrimination, whatever they mean by discrimination, we investigate it and check to make sure it is, because someone may not know to come in and say, I was discriminated against because I am a person from a community of color. So we investigate all that. We had no findings that were racially motivated, but we have been working with our operator to continue to make sure we're doing sensitivity trainings to make sure we don't have any of those outcomes. Next slide. So on plans and policies is kind of that other area. We have a public participation plan that was provided as part of the Title VI plan. We follow that with conformance that tells us what kind of public outreach do we have to do for all of our activities. For instance, nothing goes to the board around Title VI or ADA issues without it being heard by you all and being made publicly available on our website. The language assistant plan was updated, and we found our findings were very consistent when we took another look at it, which really reflects the stability of our community with our population breakdowns that we have. We do use a lot of the data that we get from our schools data that is reported with all of our attendants to look at language needs as well as comparison to census data. And overall, we find that just under 56% of people in our service area speak English well. 44% identified as speaking English less than well. That came out of the American Community Survey, which is the interim service census reports that are done. We found in our writer survey that 87% of our writers could say that they speak English well, and 12.6 say they speak it less than well. The standard things that we provide to make sure that there's equitable access for those individuals that identify as speaking English less than well is the language line, which is really commonly used, so that if a bus operator, any frontline person, anyone at StanRTA cannot communicate with the person in their preferred language, that we can call, and with a quick phone call, we can connect and bring in the operator that will provide translation for us in up to 80 languages. Spanish is the only language that is safe harbor that we really need to provide it. Everything else is less than 1% with people identifying with a language need. So again, the language line suffices for that. We also provide, like, our website and things can be changed into the language of someone's preference and that they want outside of English. And on customer service and our frontline folks, we always have somebody available who can speak in Spanish. So it's not limited to them, but that we make sure that we have those core opportunities when we're going to interact with it. And again, it's available to our operators. We also did and have done regularly an employee survey, which goes to our frontline people, asking for them to identify ways that we can continue to improve our service for LAP support. And one of the new things that we've just started doing is carrying where we have business cards that are available for our operators to carry, so that if someone doesn't speak is not comfortable speaking English, they can hand it to them. They can call and communicate directly because the operator doesn't carry that cell phone with them on the bus. And instead of going through the radio and dispatch, we can pass those cards to someone so they can contact the language line. And it's predominantly in Spanish for us because that's our primary language, so that they can engage with that too and work with it. So that just gives you that information. Next and last slide is just touching real quickly on the aspects that were contained in the plan. Is that we provided our service standards and policies. We provided our maps of all the regions. We included our fixed route survey. We did those equity studies that I talked to you about. And we, on the last thing that's worth mentioning that I wanted to talk to you about just briefly was the membership on agency bodies. And it can be a challenge for public agencies to get good engagement among a diverse group of people for many reasons and capacities. And I want to just use this as an opportunity to thank all of you who participate and work on this committee. We really have, as I talk to transit agencies across the country, a remarkable cross-section of individuals that don't come together between ages, ethnicities, experiences in life, level kinds of abilities. So thank you all for making the time to always come and to do this civic service for us and to be available. With that, I kept it very short because the document itself is like 20 pages long, where we basically put together the compendium of the 250 pages of appendix that go with this document. If there are any questions, I am happy to take them, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions from the committee?
I have a question.
I'm always so happy to have one.
I'm wondering if for your frontline staff who maybe does speak another language, if you guys as an internal policy offer like a language stipend for their service providing that language in their line of business.
Inside StanRTA, that doesn't happen, but we wouldn't be considered frontline the same way. So TransDev, I'll just look at you and blink and say, that's a great idea if you don't do it, that we would encourage that.
Question.
Hannah's point was wondering if for frontline employees that speak another language and use that in the conduct of their duties, if there's a stipend or any kind of pay differential that addresses that.
No, but we can push that along.
Yeah, just pass that along. It's a great idea.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Yes.
My name's Jessica with TransDev. So if we have an operator hand a card that is the
Yeah.
language line card out, who pays that cost? Is that like associated?
That the person it's an 800 line that they dial, and it's totally free, and the individual with their cell phone
Okay.
would do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay. Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the resolution of the 2022-25 Title VI program update?
I'll make that a motion.
Second? It has been motioned in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been approved. Next, we will have item 6C, the short-range transit plan.
Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce the consulting team. At our last meeting, you'll recall, we gave you just a brief orientation of the fact that we were starting this process that'll run for the year. And today we have our project team here to give you some updates about what they've been doing and what's coming up. From Kimberly Horn, and we have Adam Dankberg.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Adam Dankberg with Kimberly Horn. I'm the project manager for the Kimley Horn team, which is the consultant team hired by StanRTA for this effort. Next slide. So we have a presentation today. It's our first opportunity to be in front of you all, so looking forward to being here and working with you over the course of this project. We'll give you a little bit of project background, talk about some of the analysis that we've been doing thus far. We have some community engagement coming up, so we'll be talking through that a little bit, and then we'll be talking about your role, and we'll be looking for lots of input from you over the course of the project. Slide. So this is a few of us. I think we're going to tag team this presentation, so you'll get an opportunity to hear from several of us. But we are all here, I believe, in the room right now. So again, I'm Adam Dankberg, the project manager, and you'll be hearing from James, Brandy, and I think I'm not sure if Gina gets to talk or not, but you'll hear from her at some point over the course of the project, and she's right there. So thank you. Next slide. Next slide. So I believe Angela gave you a brief primer on the project last time. So I'm not going to go in a ton of detail on this, but it's our first opportunity to use our own words to be in front of you. So thought it'd be useful for us to really relay how we view this project and what we view the opportunities are. So as a refresher, there are 3 phases that are all combined into this one effort. The first is a short-range transit plan. And the purpose of that is really to look at the existing service that is out there and figure out ways to make sure that it really aligns with the demand and the need. And so really assessing how the service is performing and where there may be unmet needs or other opportunities to grow ridership and really make the service more efficient. The second phase is the BRT master plan. And so that will be looking at opportunities to provide transit priority treatments, BRT standing for bus rapid transit. Talk about that a little more in the next slide, but really to come up with a plan for where transit priority treatments will be most effective throughout the service area and in terms of encouraging ridership and making the system more efficient. And then the final step is the BRT implementation plan. And that is where we take one of the corridors and really start thinking about what would this actually look like out on the roadway, where there are specific opportunities to put in things like transit lanes, transit signal priority, improve bus stops, and make that really a high quality line that can serve a larger number of people in the overall network. This study is funded through the state through a combination of Transportation Development Act and the REAP 2.0 grant programs. Next slide. So just a couple definitions here. The short-range transit plan really is the kind of guiding document for the agency, really for that near-term horizon. So looking within the next 5 to 10 years, where can the agency have identify improvements to enhance its service. And those improvements can include changes to bus routing. It could be capital improvements, such as improvements to bus stops or other infrastructure that is out in the field, as well as then doing financial analysis to make sure that it is aligning with the anticipated revenues that are projected over that time period. The short-range transit plan is a state requirement, so agencies are required to update their short-range transit plan, and so this will meet that state requirement. In terms of bus rapid transit, folks may be familiar with that in other areas, the Bay Area or Southern California and Los Angeles or San Diego. There are some of those systems. It is a bus, but it is really a substantially enhanced bus. It's designed to work in the highest, purest form, more like a rail system, where the bus has separated right-of-way, has really nice, high-quality stations, and doesn't get stuck in congestion. Now, there's different degrees of bus rapid transit. It doesn't have to be that gold system. There are steps you can take towards that can still make the bus more desirable, more competitive with traffic, and be able to increase ridership. And that's where we'll be looking at what are the opportunities to progress towards a bus rapid transit system, and does it make sense in this environment here? And the idea is, like I said, it's light rail costs a lot of money to implement. And so the idea is with bus rapid transit, it's something you can do on a more economical budget and thus, probably a better fit for the riders and the environment that exists in this service area. Next slide. So the overall project, we will need to wrap up by the end of 2026. So this will be a quick paced project. So especially to get all 3 phases in before the end of 2026. So we have already started on the short range transit plan, and we'll be presenting some of the analysis from that here today. And then in the early part of 2026, we'll be diving into the BRT feasibility analysis and then the implementation plan. There will be some overlap so that we can best leverage our opportunities to engage the public and get as much feedback as we possibly can over the course of this project. And with that, I'll hand it over to James.
Hi, good afternoon. James Gum is also with Kimley Horn. Excited to meet you all today and look forward to presenting in front of you in coming months. The first stage of the short range transit plan is a comprehensive review of existing conditions. The findings of this analysis, combined with all of the feedback that we'll be receiving from riders, the greater community, stakeholders, staff, is going to result in some recommendations that we will bring forth to both staff as well as this committee and other groups early next year. The existing conditions analysis is comprised of several different phases. The first thing we look at is existing plans that have been adopted, both at the local and the regional levels. This is StanRTA plans and reports, also looking at StanCog, municipal plans, Caltrans. So just taking all of these previously adopted plans and understanding what are some of the key themes and priorities. Next slide, please. Then we get into the land use and infrastructure. So understanding what are the built environment in which StanRTA currently operates. So we're looking at a number of things, including land use, the mix of land use, the different typologies, street characteristics, as well as different barriers to transit within the service area. Then we conduct a market demand analysis. So here we're looking at a number of different data sources, including demographics, socioeconomics, employment characteristics, both locally, regionally, within the service area. We're looking at the distribution as well as the concentration of different transit priority populations and understanding how StanRTA is serving those, if they're serving them well today, if there's areas that are either underserved or overserved. And from this analysis, we'll be able to determine how we can make some adjustments to the service. Next slide, please. The system analysis is a lot of fun. This is where we dig into the service at a high level, and we provide a summary of both historical conditions such as ridership, how things are evolving. It's also a snapshot of how things are looking today or this year. Here we consider things such as availability of service, how much service, where is it provided. That's everything to do with service span, coverage, frequency. We also look at the different service types so that we're measuring the different routes appropriately. Commuters with commuter routes, local routes with local routes. We also examine things such as where the hours of service and the vehicles are allocated. We look at the fleet and the bus stops and the conditions there. And then several different performance metrics such as ridership, productivity, and on-time performance. Then we also take a deeper dive into the different routes individually to conduct a very detailed evaluation. Next slide, please. Here, the next series of slides show a couple of examples of how we're evaluating each individual route on its own, and then tying that back to the overall network. So here we're looking at how the routes are designed, where they go, how they connect with other routes, the frequencies, as well as the service span, the different destinations they serve, the market groups that they serve, and then how they perform individually. From this, next slide, please. We also look at ridership by trip, by the bus stop level, by weekday versus Saturday and Sunday. Next slide. On-time performance. And then from this route level analysis, we develop a list of different strengths and challenges that'll serve as a framework for some of those future service concepts and recommendations. Next slide. Lastly, we also take a step back from not just looking at transit performance and transit design, but also just what are some of the general travel patterns. So this will help us understand if there's some untapped markets out there. So we take mobile phone data and we look at intercity travel patterns. We look at internal travel within the Modesto service area. We also look at trips from specific districts and neighborhoods to see where people are traveling to and from. A couple of examples of some of those maps and how we take a very sub area look at some of those travel patterns. All right, now I'm going to pass over to Brandy and she's going to talk about some of our upcoming and ongoing community outreach activities.
All right, hi. I'm Brandy Childress. I don't usually need a microphone, but I'm going to use it anyway. Again, Brandy Childress, I'm with the Kimberly Horn team. I am the outreach lead for this project, which basically means I'm going to be going out to the community and getting their feedback, talking to writers. But one of my favorite things to do is to talk to the people who are behind the bus and the wheel. So I got to spend 6.5 hours with our operators this morning, talking about some really great things that they like about the routes, some things that they don't like about the routes, taking this back to the technical team to really, fold in that input. So the external facing, we wanted to, do all of this internal soundboarding with you today with the operators, and then we're going to go more public facing. As Adam mentioned, we kind of really want to get some things locked in before the end of the year, which sometimes is hard to do and get people's attention over the holidays, but we're going to try really, really hard. That means also I'm going to be looking at you all to share information with your networks and pass out, any social media that we have or content in a newsletter. We are looking to really go live on November 21st, which is just a couple Fridays from now. We're going to start with some tabling events that you see here. There's an event at MJC, their Pride celebration. So we're going to be there. I think it's going to be really great to get some feedback from students and folks who are already riding those buses. We have 2 events on December 6th, and these are really to draw from the community at who might not be riding right now, but we hope they become writers in the future. We are looking at, I talked with Adam, the CEO, about popping up at the transit center. Of course, talking to writers, I think that's going to be a really great location. So we're going to do all of that groundwork, and that's also to promote getting people to attend a December, I think we're aiming December 10 for a public meeting. So we'll be getting feedback on some ideas, what people's pain points are, what can be improved, and then we'll take all that feedback in and develop the concepts that these smart guys behind me are going to do. We're also working with a community-based organization who has really great relationships in Modesto series and around the county, and that their firm is called Debrief, and they're going to be interviewing stakeholders. They've got a bunch of other CBOs, community-based organizations, lined up to talk to and do focus groups. So we're really trying to, uncover all the stones. So just wanted to give you that background and give you more details are going to be on this website. It is connectthes.org. It's live. Thanks to you buying the domain name, and we're going to start promoting that. So that's where you can find the survey. That's where you can find all of the public meetings, and that's where you can point people to get more information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just a couple more slides here. Next slide. So in terms of your involvement, so we're excited to be here and to be gathering feedback from you all. So the expectation is that we'll be back here 3 or 4 more times over the course of the project, again, between now and the end of next year. And we would love to hear your input at each of those updates. At this point, we're kind of introducing the project and so forth, but the next couple times we come here, we're going to have lots of initial findings and drafts and things like that to share with you. And so we'd love to get your input along the way. And then we also really are asking you to engage with your networks to help make them aware of this project, give them a conduit for providing their feedback, encouraging them to attend our outreach events, because really we're hoping to multiply the opportunities and relationships and connections that we can make through you all. So thank you for your continued support on this project. Next slide. And then finally, to wrap up here, just kind of talking through what we expect to conquer between the next time we're back in front of this group. So we have been advancing the existing conditions analysis that James talked about. We're getting pretty close on that, so we'll be wrapping that up here in the next few weeks. We'll be conducting outreach round 1, which Brandy mentioned, and that is really focused on understanding what are the existing needs and service gaps in the system, both from existing riders and predominantly existing riders, but also some non-riders, and understand what are some things that we can do to encourage them to take transit. So that's really the focus of round 1, is understanding what are those needs and opportunities. We'll be, of course, reviewing that input in great detail and then use that to really serve as the foundation for identifying network and route changes. And so we'll come back here next time to start talking about some of those initial ideas and the feedback that we have heard along the way. So with that, we're all happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the committee?
Just a quick one. Yeah, so thank you all for this presentation. Really exciting to see this project y'all are working on. I was just wondering, so I work with a lot of disadvantaged unincorporated community groups, and know several different nonprofits. Should I get in touch with y'all or get in touch with Debrief to see about maybe having some additional focus groups? Sounds great. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the committee?
We would love to hear from the committee, especially with the organizations you represent and just in the communities you live in. If we can get you, you connect us to the right folks in your organization so that we can pass the word along to look at it. Like on the schools area, we're really looking at, do school trippers make sense? Are we really reaching enough across the county with schools and the needs students have? As you know, Angelica, the community CSA works with is very engaged in how do we get out there and to do it, especially as we're looking at options where we're going to be proposing changes to routes to get feedback from those riders or individuals that could be and would be using service. So if we can get that feedback, Brandy, how about just a suggestion that maybe we keep, if with your all permission, that I'll send an email out connecting you all to Brandy so that that feedback can go up because she's really going to be spearheading this for us with creating that information, getting it out so it can dovetail into your existing newsletters and the like in your networks. And when their team's not available, our members of our team can be available to help support the effort and spread the word too as this moves along. Mohammed, the same, I'm staring at you because you are the man on the move connected to all sorts of things. Yes.
I will connect you with the day programs and obviously Jacinta can connect you with the regional center. Yeah, I'll email you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, I will move to the public if there were any questions or comments from the public. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Ron McMurtry here. I just have a quick question for Adam. I want to look at the data more closely. Not this Adam. I know that's just not going to work. The data you had color coded, and I wanted to know just for my mind right now because I'm a map guy. The darker things, is that where there's more need or more traffic? Is that considered the higher levels? Because you showed a map of needs. You also showed a map of current traffic patterns that were just little arcs drawn all over the county. Thank you.
Yes, trying to figure out exactly which map I might be referring to, but yeah, in general, the let's see, there's one, if you can go to slide 18. Yeah, this one. Okay, yeah. So the darker the line, the more trips. This is we didn't spend a whole lot of time going through this because we will have an existing conditions document that will have lots of information. But since you asked, certainly want to provide the information. So this map looks at the trip making between different population centers, kind of different areas of the county. And so in this case, the darker the line, the thicker the line, both mean more trips. So more trips are being conducted each weekday, the darker and thicker. So Ceres Modesto is a really strong connection, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions or comments from the public? All right. Well, thank you for your presentation. And now we'll move on to item number 7A, the agency reports with the CEO report.
You. just a few items I wanted to share with the group. One Thanksgiving dinner, or it's coming up, the Thanksgiving holiday is coming up, and StanRTA has traditionally provided Thanksgiving transportation to Thanksgiving dinner at the Minnesota Center Plaza. In the past, we've done that via fixed routes. This year, we're going to be doing it via demand response buses only. It'll be open to everybody, not just those that ride ADA paratransit, but open to everybody. It'll just be to and from the Thanksgiving dinner at the Minnesota Center Plaza. Those rides will be free, but it's a slight change from what we've done in the past. But still wanting to provide that transportation to that event downtown Modesto. Second, we are doing our traditional free rides all December, so that'll be free on all modes: fixed route, paratransit, commuter routes, everything that we have. So take advantage of that. And lastly, the last time we met, I talked about the impending action of the purchase of the new land for our new operations and maintenance facility. This was in mid-September, and so that was passed, and we should close here in a month or so, which is great. So we're excited for that, and I think we're out on the street right now for an RFP for the design consultants to do that. So that's great too. Hopefully have that awarded in January, and we'll be moving forward with the full design of that facility and move forward to construction and hopefully get that done in a few years, 3 years or so. We'll see how it goes. So that's the plan. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you for the time.
Right, thank you. And now we're on to item number 8, committee member reports. Do we have any reports from our committee members?
The only thing I was going to mention it, I was looking at the new Route 23 inbound running time. And it seems that even though I know that the Kearney turnaround, they cut it by 5 minutes, so now it goes, it doesn't sit for 10 minutes. It seems like it kind of messed up the inbound. Like on Sunday, you used to have like a 30-minute window between the 22 and the 23. Now it's kind of lopsided. And then, so it's something I think they need to kind of take a look at again, because it's like when I was coming down here, for example, right? The 23 is chasing the 22 literally within about a minute of each other. It just seems kind of counterproductive. That there should be more of a window to separate the bus, so you don't have to have, it's a little easier for riders to get on. As I thought.
Any other reports from the committee? Yes, Mohammed.
I have noticed a influx of drivers, specifically on paratransit, not getting out of their seats to assist ambulatory passengers on and off or at least standing outside of the bus. And also just like the timing, sometimes from the time that the call for like a 5-minute call versus the time that the bus actually shows up is sometimes it's like a 15-minute different window. I don't know if that's normal or what.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
And then this morning I noticed some counterproductive timing. They had three paratransit buses in Houston within less than a half a mile of each other, picking up 3 different people going the same direction. So, yeah, I just wanted to also let that.
Okay. Thank you. And then I had just wanted to mention that I had received a report about a lengthy paratransit commute between Turlock and Empire. It was reported that it was coming from Turlock to Empire, it was about a 2-hour ride. Were there any other reports from the committee?
Just a quick comment, if I may, Madam Chair. We really appreciate hearing about when these instances happen. We strive not to have them happen, but please, if you can send details to us to follow up on, that's the fastest way for us to implement fixes so that we minimize or don't have those situations happen again. And we thank you. We do appreciate hearing about these issues.
Okay. If there is nothing else, item number 9 is adjournment. That's all that we have for today. We will adjourn. The time is 2:14. Thank you, everybody, for participating and for attending today. Our next meeting will be on February 12th, 2026 at 1 o'clock.